Hi, good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all. We were looking at the third section, the third chapter of Revolver, when he speaks about the subject of Mahu Odom. What does it mean to be a human being? What is it to be a human being? And we looked at the first section of this series. We looked at the various sources in Tanakh in which from which Revolver derived and discussed these ideas. In the second section, we looked at Chazal, and now Revolver really wants to break down a little bit more the Mareches HaSeichel, the qualities of intelligence, of mind, with which we human beings are blessed. We know, and Revolver already established, that a person is made up of a mind and midot, qualities of personality, and midas, the measure of the person. However, here in this chapter, the third chapter of Alei Shur in the second volume, Revolver wants to talk about the concept of seichel of the mind. We started last week the new source sheet, which is up on our website and should have been given out by the WhatsApp group, of this section of Revolver. And in the opening words, which we looked at last time, Revolver taught us that the mind is made up of two primary aspects, or two primary functions. The first function is seichel, which recognizes. Its job is to recognize and assess and identify. If it makes no mistake, then the result it achieves is accurate. So this is whether it recognizes an object. You're walking along and it's slightly dark and you see a blurry shape and you look more closely and you identify it and you realize this is a table or a pen. So you see the difference between objects and it recognizes what these are. And this is something that every intelligent person would agree with. If we find disagreements between people about something of this sort, it's either that there's something in the functioning of the process, the thought process, which isn't working, in which case we say this isn't a straight thinker. This is either because there's something problematic, physiological, or just because the person isn't using and exercising their seichel appropriately. Or that there's something causing it to have bias. It's meshuchad, it's bribed, it has a negias, a bias, which twists and distorts that which it thinks. So these are the two reasons why things can go wrong. Now sometimes people will disagree about things, not seemingly because of any particular bias. They simply come to a different conclusion about something. But again, that will be either because of the limitations of their processing equipment, the seichel which is granted to all of us, or because of a bias. The bias might be because they have a particular outcome or agenda that they wish to be the result, or it may be simply laziness, that they don't use their ability to think to its fullest extent. Similarly, if we say that their seichel isn't able to capture and arrive at the right conclusion, because it's too limited, this may be because there's a dysfunction, or it may simply be that this is a very difficult and complex idea that takes time to get, or they may not be equipped to ever get at all. Not everyone can arrive at a conclusion that involves great depth. Because of course, when we're talking about recognition, hakara, which is the first element of this middle that Revolver is talking about, this quality, of seichel that Revolver is talking about, we're not just talking about simple things like identifying tables and pens in the dark, but we're also talking about ability to form deep ideas and concepts, whether the ideas in philosophy or in science, and not everyone will arrive at the same conclusions in these areas, and not everyone is equipped and capable necessary of arriving at always the correct conclusion. But basically speaking, if we find people differing and disagreeing or someone getting something wrong, it's either to do with the functionality of their the seichel apparatus, whether it's dysfunctional or it's just too limited, this is too complicated, takes too much time, or because of something to do with their personal qualities, which is blinding or distorting judgment, warping their judgment with negias, or not meaning that they're not putting in enough effort. What we said is, and this is a very important point, you will often hear, and this is not correct, the Baalei Mussar don't agree with this, or many of the Baalei Mussar don't agree with this, you will often hear someone say that the only reason someone gets something wrong is because of bias, because of negias. And therefore, if someone comes to different conclusions, sometimes it's said about matters of emunah and relationships, if you see someone who comes to a different conclusion, someone who isn't a mamin, it must be because of bias, it must be because of negias. The only reason someone wouldn't believe in this is because of their agenda to be free, and they don't like the idea of having to obligate themselves to Torah and mitzvahs. But actually, the deeper Bali Musa don't go with this idea. Sometimes things are complicated. Sometimes it takes time to work this out. And everyone has their own journey to arrive at truth until they achieve insight. And even things that are relatively simple, a math sum that all of us in this meeting could do, might still take us time to do. So a sum of 437 times 248 we could do, but it will take us time. It shows that the seichel isn't a calculating machine that can instantly get to answers, even when there's no bias. Even when there's no particular agenda why I don't want to get the correct result in this maths question, or why I don't want to do it. I'll put the effort in, but it will still take me time to do. So this is the first aspect of seichel that Revolba discusses. And the second aspect of seichel he discusses is that of evaluating. This is very different to hakara, which is recognition. Hakara, which is recognition, is about true and false. Either this is or this isn't. Either it is a table or it's a pen. Either this scientific theory is correct or it isn't correct. Maybe we're not able to always work this out, but it's MS b'sheka, true and false. Either it is or it isn't. Hakara is about assessment, weighing up. From the root of haracha is about assessment, weighing up. It's subjective as opposed to objective. It's not what is this object over here or this theory over here, which we can agree upon in an objective sense. It's how do I evaluate this? What does this mean to me? How important is it to me as an individual? How much do I value this? Haracha is about valuing. To what degree do I value this? And this is a very different system. It's not always simple or obvious to say that something is true or false. It may be true or false whether I'm accurately telling you what I value, but whether I value this or that more fully, and who's correct if you value something in a certain way and I value to it a greater or lesser degree, that is intrinsically and fundamentally subjective. It's about what me and you experience as an experiencer in our own sense of self. And therefore, this is a very different sort of use of the mind, and yet it's a very important one. Revolba points out that we spend much more of our time doing haracha, evaluating, than we do hakara, than we do assessing the objective reality. We're very subjective beings. We spend a lot of the time not thinking about what is this objectively, externally, but what is this subjectively to me. And at this point, Revolba is not commenting on the pros and cons of each of these elements. He's just stating a fact. These are two elements of our existence as human beings. And we spend a lot of time evaluating. Do I like this? Don't I like this? How does this make me look? Does this look pretty? Doesn't it look pretty? Is this something important? Isn't this something important? Do I like this person? Don't I like this person? What do I feel about them? And we do that very quickly, very instantly. In fact, we often do that before we even engage in hakara, in working something out. And I mentioned last week the studies done by the psychologists that demonstrate within moments, perhaps several seconds of someone walking into the room, we already form a judgment. And many of us have this illusion, and it is an illusion. It's an optical illusion that we have this unique ability to tell something about someone from a moment's glance. And we decide very quickly what sort of person they are, whether we like them or not, without exercising our hakara, without exercising the other aspect of ourselves of what are they objectively. And this can present a challenge. It's okay to say in the first few seconds, this is haracha, what I value at this moment in time, but sometimes that needs to then be influenced by hakara, by absolute recognition. And maybe I need to reassess, and when I get to know this person better, I realize that the insight I had, call it insight, the perspective I had, the moment of judgment that I made, based upon these few seconds of seeing the person as to what sort of person they were, maybe needs to be relooked at, maybe it wasn't accurate. And here you come onto the second aspect of bias. Because even once I exercise the hakara, now I've got a problem. Because since my haracha, my immediate evaluation, led me to believe a particular angle, a particular perspective, and I came to a certain conclusion, maybe I don't like rethinking my conclusions. Maybe I find it difficult to admit that my instant conclusion wasn't so correct. And that will already then act as a bias in my hakara. So we always need to ask ourselves, is what I'm thinking about haracha? Is it an assessment, in which case I accept it's subjective? Or is it hakara, is objective? What will be the difference between which one it is? Well, it's very important. If it's haracha, if it's subjective, number one, I need to know, but I now need to check it up with hakara, with the objective. Or am I getting confused? Am I saying just because to me this is what this person feels like, to me this is how much I value them, does that mean in an absolute sense this is the sort of the person they am? Or in an objective sense, in hakara, is this the way they are? So I always need to remember which part of my mind is at work here, number one. Number two, if I'm having a disagreement with someone, if I'm disagreeing in hakara, in recognition about which there's an objective emet, v'shaka, true and false, then I can have that disagreement. But if I'm disagreeing about ha'aracha, evaluation, how much I value this, what it means to me, then how on earth can I have a disagreement about that? That's ridiculous. I'm disagreeing about something which is fundamentally and intrinsically subjective. And finally, Rav Wolbe, in the end of the second paragraph on the first page of this chapter 3, on page Kaftes, which we looked at last time, points out a unique feature of the Hebrew language, pointed out by the Maharal, explaining a comment of Rashi on the Sedra we just read, Parshas B'chokosai, which talks about a unique sort of promise, a neder that person makes, in which they promise a gift to the Beis HaMikdash based upon the value of someone, and the word the Torah uses is erekacha. Now, normally erekacha would mean your value, but the Torah here is using as a noun. The value is erekacha. So the noun for valuing always has the you in it, reminding us that valuing is fundamentally and intrinsically subjective. The noun of value can't just be detached by itself. There isn't an objective erech that we can talk about. The erech that we can talk about is always erekacha, how much the value is to you as a subjective person, or to me as a subjective person, but not in an absolute sense. So this is the idea that Rav Wolbe said, and this is a summary of really the first page, which we read but didn't have time to completely explore in the last shir. Before I go any further, I'll just pause there if there's any questions anyone wants to ask, to unmute themselves, or to ask via chat. Otherwise, we will go on. Okay, so this is the first section of Rav Wolbe. He now points out something absolutely fascinating, which is often missed, and this is the final paragraph on page Kaftes, which we're going to learn together. So let's have a look at the source sheets here. And Rav Wolbe says as follows: Ha'kara v'ha'aracha einon teluyos zeh b'zeh. Recognition and evaluation don't depend on each other. And we've already discussed that. It's possible that to evaluate really without doing proper ha'kara, which needs careful thought. Because surely I need the information available, and then I can use it to evaluate what I appreciate, what I don't, what I value, what I don't value. Until I have the hakara, the objective facts, how can I really evaluate with the ha'aracha? But that's the way it is. They don't always depend on each other. I can detach them. And now he points out, fascinatingly, koach ha'aracha kodem lekoach hakara. The evaluating ability within a human being develops earlier than hakara. This is both fascinating and a little scary. The hitpachtut adam, in the process of hitpachtut, of hitpachtut, the petach, the opening up, the development of a person. All us human beings go through hitpachtut, through a opening, a development of ourselves, a maturation of ourselves, and the koach, the ability of evaluation, comes ahead of hakara, of absolute recognition. Tinok, a small child, already evaluates and chooses that which they like, and that which they dislike, that they find disgusting, that which they don't like. A child already is ma'arich, values that which is noachlo, that which is pleasant and likable, or mo'es, and finds disgusting, rejects that which they don't value. Koach ha'kara, on the other hand, the force, the ability to assess and recognize, mitpateach rak la'at, only opens slowly. So this is a remarkable insight. In human development, a young child, a little child, within moments of being born, already is able to start assessing that which they like and that which they don't like. Now, the moments of birth, a child already has certain reflexes and certainly knows to cry when they feel pain and enjoy that which is positive. We don't know that much about the very early moments of life, but certainly within a few weeks, a child already has tastes. They choose things they like and don't like, and different children already may have different sense of taste, and certainly they're able to respond beyond it just being a sort of a reflex pathway. There's already an assessment of that which they like and don't like, long before there's a proper or in any way developed hakara. That's how we develop in terms of the process of our maturation. However, the same thing occurs every single day and every single moment with us adults, in the process of how we assess things that are going on around us. And therefore carries on Rav Wolbe. Gam odom muvugar, even an adult, a mature person, alul lahakir ha'emet, aval einu marachosa. They're capable of detaching the two and recognizing the truth, but not necessarily valuing it. Hastira bein hakara objektivit, the contradiction between recognition, which is objective, or bein haracha subjectivit, and between subjective recognition, Alula ligrom mavak panimi charif, can cause an intense internal battle. Baal Maila Marich Mashrimaki Shehu Emes. A person of quality, and here we begin seeing how he uses the words of Baal Maila, a person of Ma'ala, of quality. A person of quality is able to resolve this conflict, and whilst we haven't resolved this conflict, we struggle to be a person of Ma'ala, a person of quality. The word Ma'ala actually means elevation. We all want to soar, we want to fly, we want to elevate ourselves, we want to grow. However, if we want to maximize our energy, we need to channel it all in one direction. If our energy is putting in a slightly different direction, then we won't maximize our energy. And if our energy is in a completely different direction, then we won't be able to move at all, because it's literally putting us in different ways. Someone who is completely conflicted can't move at all. If the haracha, that which they value, is pulling them one way, and the hakara, that which they recognize, is pulling them completely the opposite way. In other words, they value, to put it differently, shaka, 100%, that which is false and unreal, and they don't value at all that which is MS, that which is real, then the haracha, their valuation, and the hakara is completely conflicted. At best. At worst, they'll just follow their evaluation, and they'll drag themselves into the pits of shaka, of falsehood, of emptiness. Someone who wishes to be a Baal Maila, on the other hand, they're both pulling in the same direction, they're resolved. And the rest of us are Beinoni, the rest of us in the middle, are pulled somewhat. We're not always able to resolve the two, and therefore ends up as a scene of battle. In the language of Revolba, it is a ma'avak pnimi, an internal fight, charif, which is very strong and very powerful. Let's not forget, the Revolba here is still dealing with the issue of Mahu Adam. What does it mean to be a human being? In the previous chapters, he dealt with it in one perspective. Here, he's now looking at the Mareches HaSeichel, the mental processes, the intellectual qualities that we human beings have. And he's pointing out that these are split into Hakara and Haracha, and they sometimes fight amongst themselves. Part of what it means to be a human being is to have these qualities, and part of what it means to be a human being is for them to be in conflict, for them to have a mavak, a fight going on between them, and for us to need to struggle how to resolve them. So this is the next point that Revolba makes, and a very important one. It's a common point, often said, that we humans have desires which conflict sometimes with that which we know is right. Revolba here is pointing out something a little deeper. We can think that the conflict, though, is what I want versus that which I know to be right. But it's missing the point, because how can I want something which I know to be wrong? The answer is, we're not talking here about wants and desires versus our mind. It's often presented as if the struggle of Musa is between our heart and our minds. Our heart, the seat, metaphorically, of that which we desire, and our minds, which are the seat of that which we know. And sometimes one relates to that almost as if I know something and yet I want something else. This is too superficial. There may be something going on in that also, but there's a deeper thing going on. There's a battle within our mind itself, between that which we know and that which we value within the mind itself. Why do we want something? Why does the heart want something? Because it values it. Why does it value it? Because the seichel, the mind, says this is something valuable. This is something important to me. This is something desirable and of worth to me. And therefore the desire flows out of that. So if we restrict ourselves to fighting with brain power, with mind, the desire that's pulling us with great intensity towards something, then we're fighting with our arms tied behind our back. We're missing where the real battle is taking place. We need to go deeper. We need to go more fundamental. We need to understand that really where the battle is taking place is because our haracha, our assessment of value, is conflicting with that which we know. And that's where we need to start the conversation. If we're not having a conversation in our heads between these two systems of thought, then that's where conflict takes place. And then we're going to lose some of the time. So yes, we can use Musa, in which we try and strengthen the seichel against the battles and the desires of the heart and deal with the conflicts, but then we're not really going to get to the crux of the matter. So this is the next and absolutely fundamental point Revolba makes. I want to just emphasize this point for the full depth that it deserves. It's almost as if they're two lenses through which we can look at the world, two pairs of glasses that we can wear. And it's wearing these different glasses will make us see things differently. We can look through the glasses and they're different strength and a different vision and different setting by the optician. And one is a sunglasses and the other is a regular pair of glasses. Then we're going to see things completely differently. And it's like trying to have a fight between, is it light outside, is it dark outside? Is this object large or is it small? Does it have these details or not these details? And not recognizing that one's simply looking through these different pair of glasses. It's a completely different perspective. Again, in the research of modern psychology, our brain literally has two systems with which to assess. I mentioned already last week the work of someone called Kahneman. He's got this book called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, in which he speaks a lot about these ideas, including some of the paradoxes that result from this. The idea that we sometimes assess people worse in interviews and the like. They make a worse employee if they're employed in an interview in which you can see what the person looks like, because we then think fast, which is another word of saying we see through the lens which is subjective. We immediately see it through the prism of what do I value as opposed to what is the person in an absolute sense. And if we do that, we're going to go wrong. We're not going to be able to resolve the inner conflict inside ourselves. The next paragraph actually, before I go on to the next paragraph, I'll just pause in case there's any questions anyone wants to ask on this. Okay, so we'll go on to the next paragraph of Revolba. This begins on the bottom of page Kaftes, the first page of this chapter that we're looking at, the first page in the handout, one line, and then it moves on to about a third of the way down onto the next page. And in this section, Revolba is going to ask what leads to us valuing some things and not valuing other things. What is it that subjectively causes some people to value one thing and other people to value something else? What is it that determines this subjective difference? What is that which we value a function of, if we wish to take it a little deeper? Incidentally, what is it that the hakara, the objective assessment, what is that a function of? But that question is easier to answer. The second question about what we value is a little harder to answer. And therefore Revolba says as follows: Ha-hakara hu pa'ulot machshava yonit. That which we objectively recognize, our assessment of, as I said, which theory and science is true, or whether this is two simple objects, whether this is a table or a chair or a pen, is the result of machshava yonit, of intense, careful consideration and thought. So we consider something, we think about it, and we understand that the achievement, the outcome, the result, the hakara, the assessment of the situation that we make, is a product of that careful thought. Ha'haracha, last line of the page, evaluation, meichon hinavat. What does it flow out of? What does it draw its assessment from? Says Revolba, mitchonot, from aspects of characters, v'nigiot, and bias, zehu svara shitchit midai. This is an overly superficial assessment. We're now on the first line of the next page. To think that the only reason why some people value something and other people don't is because of bias, that's too superficial. Here's important to stress: why is it a superficial answer? And the answer is because bias is worth talking about in the context of hakara, of recognition. There's an absolute objective truth. It's not subjective. It's about the objective. What is this object? And there you can say, I can get it wrong or right, depending on my functioning of my mind, and my bias can distort me. To talk about bias in the context of haracha, of evaluation, it is missing the point. There's something deeper going on there, because by definition, it's a subjective thing rather than objective. So therefore he says this is a superficial point, this is missing the idea. Kanireh, he says, it would appear, hinavad mi etzem mahut hanefesh. It comes from an intrinsic quality of sense, of self. Humans have a different mahut. Mahut, again, is one of these words made up by the Rishonim. In Lashon HaKodesh in Hebrew, there's the word ma, what. Mahut is the whatness of something. The Rishonim and the Gaonim developed these words as ways of being able to express psychology and philosophy. I'll mention as an aside, in Chazal, you don't find Chazal speaking directly about psychology or philosophy. Instead, they used a different means of conveying these ideas, which is metaphor and storytelling, which is Medrash and the language of Medrash and the language of Haggadah in Gemara. It's a bit like getting psychological insight from literature, from a work of art. Maybe you can look at a great painting or a great book that's been written, and through that you can deepen your understanding of nature, or of a personality, or insight into human emotion and the like. So that's how Chazal taught us in Hashkafa and in Musa and in psychology and in philosophy, and therefore they didn't use these words. The Gaonim and the Rishonim came in contact with what we would nowadays call Western thought, with Greek philosophy and the like, and therefore they developed a vocabulary to allow us to speak directly and fundamentally about these things, rather than through art and through story and through a vision and a narrative. Now, we are all Westerners. We're all products of 1,000 years, 2,000 years of Western and scientific and Greek thinking, and therefore when we learn the works of Revolba, the Bali Musa, the works of the Rishonim, we have to use this language. But we need to recognize that we lose something by doing that, because it reflects this sort of desire to break things up into pieces, as opposed to art, which helps us see things as an organic whole, as opposed to the language of Medrash and Haggadah, which allows something to see things holistically. Let me give you an example of this. It's a little bit like if I ask you, what's the best way of learning a language? Is it worth learning it in the classroom? I want to learn French. Why someone would want to learn French, I don't know. Someone wants to learn French. So I can either learn it in the classroom, and I'll give you access to the best French academics in the world, the best professors who can teach me the French, and they'll teach me everything. And they'll tell me all the grammatical rules and all the structures of the French language, and I'll come out absolutely knowing it. Alternative number two is I'll live in France for a few years with French peasants. These French peasants know nothing about the rules of grammar. They don't know any of the terms. They may even occasionally make a mistake in grammar or in language, but they speak the language, they breathe the language, they live the language. I'll be immersed in an environment in which I'll pick up organically what something means, rather than learning as a sort of program, an algorithm, a formula, as one would do in the classroom. So each one has advantages, it's true. Learning in the classroom gives me a precision and a fine-tuning and an ability to define that I wouldn't be able to get through just living in France and being immersed in the atmosphere. But I'll be missing much more than I gain. Because by living there and experiencing it, I'm developing it holistically, I'm understanding the whole thing. I'm learning from the inside what it feels like to be French and to live the language and the subtleties of how words are used that can't really ever be translated accurately from language to language. And it's exactly the same when we're trying to learn the language of Torah, when we're trying to understand the concept of Torah. We're now in the last Shur before Shavuos. The learning can't be a classroom learning, because then I'll only ever be like the foreign students who's trying to learn French in the classroom. If I want to live amongst the French and really pick it up, I need to live within the Beit HaMidrash. I need to live within Torah. That's the way to pick it up from the inside. And that's what Chazal were trying to do by telling Haggadah, by telling Midrashim. There's a Ramchal that asks, why are there two halakim, two sections of Torah? Why is there Torah Shebechsav and Torah Shebal Peh? And he answers, Torah Shebechsav is what's written. It's a conversation for another day. That's one thing that we got on Har Sinai. But Torah Shebal Peh is oral, it's with our mouths. It's delivered from person to person. Because Torah can't be taught through book instruction. Particularly certain parts of Torah, but I've mentioned before in the context of Lehava Shiurim, when it comes to doing Hachmas Sarkim, these things need to be lived. We need to learn it from a live teacher who's a role model, who can see experientially what they're trying to teach us. That's a different sort of Torah. Shema b'ni Musa Avicha. There's a Torah we can learn from Avicha, the Musa, the learning, the qualities of Musa. However, the Altitosh Torah Semecha, don't forget the Torah of the mother, which is this immersive, embracive, lived experience that we get from the home. Most people know actually much more Torah from the lived experience of the home rather than that which you learn in a classroom. This is Torah Shebal Peh. Now, unfortunately, Torah Shebal Peh had to be written down, and therefore we have the Mishnah, the Gemara, and so on. Torah Shebal Peh was written down, people were forgetting it. However, when it came to Haggadah, the secrets of Torah, the elements of Torah which are about us and what we experience and what we live and our inner life, that's what they call the secrets of Torah, that which is inside ourselves, the musa, the psychology, the spiritual realm within ourselves, that still has to be taught by Baal Peh. It can't be taught by book learning, by a formula. It has to be taught by lived experience. And therefore Chazal taught it through Haggadah. And therefore they taught it in a way where it can only be understood when taught by a living teacher. You can open a book and you can learn halacha, but you can't really open a book and learn Haggadah. And this is the separate chelek of Torah that deals with Musa. And unfortunately, we've had to develop a language which gives us a philosophical vocabulary to talk about it, and we have to do that, because otherwise we don't understand it. And through that we get a precision and insight, but we lose the organic whole, which is the way that Chazal taught us these ideas. And therefore this is the word mahus. As I said, it's not a word you find in Lashon HaKodesh, it's a word that the Rishonim, the Gaonim, developed out of Lashon HaKodesh, the ma-ness of something, the what-ness of something, the essence of what something is. And Rav Wolbe here is arguing that which we value comes out of that which is essential to what we are, to our essence, our essential shape and configuration and makeup as people. And he quotes here, "Re'ei Shakosov Yodea Hagodol." He says, "The great Noah, B'koichos Nefesh, the one who knew so much about forces and attributes of personality. Halohu Rabbeinu Yonah, that is Rabbeinu Yonah from Spain, generation of the Ramban, a few generations after the Rambam, who quotes a pasuk, "Metzarif lekasef kol azav ve'ish lefi mahalloi." He says, in the same way as we need, when you get gold, you need to melt it down, and through that remove the impurities, because when it melts, the stone and the dust and the earth stay whole and the gold runs off, and that's how you get pure gold. And the same with pure silver. They're called smelting pots or furnaces, which are used to produce. So too, ish lefi mahallo. If you want to get to the essence of what a person is, in the same way as this smelting pot, this furnace, used, the Korah Basel used to melt silver and gold, gets to the essential part of gold and removes all the rubbish, all the impurities in it. So too, if I want to get to the essence, the essential quality of what a person is, then I need to look lefi mahalalo, to that which they praise, that which they value. Perush, the explanation is ma'alo sa'odom, the quality of a person, lefi mashi halal, is based on that which they praise. From the word halal. If someone praises and values righteous people, wise people, good deeds, Teda, one can know, or Bachanto, and one has tested that the root of goodness is within that person. Because all they do is see the qualities and the positivities and the praise in people who represent qualities, who represent good deeds, who are wise, or tzaddikim, who are righteous, who do masim tovim. And to scorn that which is negative. It's possible, of course, that this person does still do averus. He's still someone who loves and values justice. This is someone who's from the congregation of those who honor Hashem. And one who gives praise to negative actions, and someone who praises those who do evil. This is someone who empties out the world of avodas Hashem and is a bad person. So here Rabbeinu Yonah is saying the following idea. Of course, we're not talking about someone who's just a PR, just engaged in a PR exercise and is lying about that which they really value. But if someone really values that which is good, it doesn't mean they're a tzaddik. We all get things right and get things wrong. But it means that their mareches, their framework of ha'aracha, of evaluation is correct. Then we know that the root, the foundation, is solid, is positive. And he carries on, says Rav Wolbe, just to conclude the lines of this paragraph, in this very paragraph that he's quoting from Rav Wolbe, this is from the fundamental makeup of a person. The intrinsic quality of a person is revealed by that which they value. Let me just try and make this a little clearer. Someone in the chat group has asked, what's the difference between following the heart and desires and haracha, which is evaluation? And this is the point over here. These are two separate concepts. We have hakara, which is objective recognition of that which is outside ourselves. We have haracha, which is that which we value, that which we see as important. Now, inevitably, the haracha, that which we value, will also have an impact on that which we desire. That is true, that is correct. We will generally, but not always, desire that which we value. Sometimes we may choose to desire or do something which we don't value. But the two are linked, that is correct. But fundamentally, that which we desire is driven by a want. It's from the seat of emotions, it's from the seat of wants. To view the conflict within a human being as between that which we long for, that which we want, and that which we intellectually know, is to look at the second stage, is to look at the outcome. What drives, or one of the drivers of that which we want, is something deeper and more fundamental, which is in the mind. What do we value? What do we value is part of what we use to determine that which we want. It's not the only thing that we use to determine that which we want, but it one of the main elements that determine that which we want. But to view it therefore as a conflict between desire and want on the one hand, and knowledge on the other hand, is missing the point. There's two sorts of knowledge. There's two sorts of thinking we can engage in. We can engage in hakara and we can engage in ha'aracha, in evaluation, in that which we value, that which we see as important, that matters to us, that's significant to us, that comes before that which we want. Obviously, if something is significant to us, that will impact and often cause that we will then want it. So this is the second point that Revolver makes, and I think it's a very fundamental point. Again, I'll emphasize this because I was asked it in the chat. These are a different pair of lenses. It's a different way of looking at the world. We're still, the mind, the difference between the mind and the heart is that the mind, again, we're using metaphor when we talk about the heart. The mind has eyes. The mind looks out at the world. It physically and conceptually. It looks outwards. It can look outwards in two different ways. It can look outwards and say, what do I value in this? And it can look outwards and see the objective truth, which scientific theory is true, what is this object? But this is about looking outwards. It's not about the impulse then to draw inwards. That's a later stage. If we think there's a battle between how we look out and how we draw in, then we've misunderstood. That's what we mean when we say there's a fight between the seichel and the heart, between that which we want to draw in, the emotion that the sense of self and longing and ambition and drive and want to grab and bring inwards. These are the world of wants and emotions. If we see a conflict between that and our minds, we're misunderstanding something. Because in our minds itself, there's a conflict between what we see. We can look at different things. We can see the world in different ways. We can see the world through the lens of objectivity, and we can see the world through a lens of haracha, of evaluation. And it's a mistake to see one of these lenses as good and one of these lenses as bad. They're both granted to us by Hashem in our makeup as a human being, as part of our mind. But they're doing different things. Problems start when we don't try and get the two to talk to each other. Problems start when we don't notice that they're not in sync. And it gets even worse if we get mixed up between the two. And we don't notice whether we're looking at something with an evaluation and a subjective ha'aracha, or whether we're looking at something with an absolute hakara. Revolver already said, actually, and he gave away the punchline in the last chapter, he says, when it comes to hakara, we can't achieve perfect emes. No individual can see the absolute truth of the whole situation. To know the truth of the whole situation, we would have to know the galaxy with its billions of stars and every atom and every molecule. To have to know everything and the whole course of human history and the whole world of morality. Only Hashem can know emes. The mitzvah upon us to be doimer, to be similar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to imitate him, doesn't apply to the quality of emes and sheker, because we can't know the whole truth. It's a quality in the world of other things we can copy HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but in emes we can't. But the fact is, we've been gifted by HaKadosh Baruch Hu the quality of recognizing emes to a degree, hakara. But we also have an aspect of haracha, of evaluation, and that's equally important to what we are as human beings. In the chat I've been asked, how can we sync the two? And we'll get to that. That's where Revolver is going to take us. But the first stage is to recognize the two and to learn to identify them. And maybe there's a practical essay, a project or homework almost we can do from the shir. Before we want to start assessing how we can put the two together, we need to learn to recognize them. We need to notice which one we're doing and try and engage it. It becomes very, very difficult and laborious and draining to do this for 5 minutes. But for 5 minutes, every passing thought I have, I'm talking to friends, just monitor oneself and think, hakara, haracha, recognition, evaluation, objective, subjective, worlds of true and false, worlds of me, what I want and what I don't want, what I value and what I don't value. Just notice the difference between the twos in the thinking process, and to really start syncing them completely, one needs to be doing this 24/7, or at least all one's waking hours. Because these are two different, and in truth, even on sleeping time, because there's still things going on inside one's head. That's another conversation. But that's the first stage of being able to work out, before we can talk about syncing them, is just to be self-aware about what's going on. I mentioned sleep because, as is well known, great figures achieve Torah even in their sleep, because the mind is processing things and thinking about things. And great figures can wake up in the morning and have a Torah idea which has occurred to them overnight, something they were struggling with that has been resolved over this time. Now, we're running out of time, so I'll just perhaps summarize the next chapter, paragraph that Rolbers deals with, and then we'll stop. And in Mitzvah Hashem, not next week, which is Shavuos, but the week after that, we'll resume and relook at this issue. But Rolbers is going to argue that up to now I've explained that human beings have both elements, hakara and haracha. It is haracha, evaluation, that makes us uniquely human. It's the more important part of us as human beings. Remarkable. We would have thought hakara is that which is best and noblest in a human being, but that's not the case. It is haracha, which is about the essence of what we are. And the truth is, he's already said it, because he said from Rabbeinu Yonah that you can tell from that which we value what sort of person we really are. But here in the next paragraph, he puts it a little bit more profoundly, a little bit more deeply. If Hashem wants in us human beings just the quality of hakara, of recognition, then he shouldn't have made us human beings. Malachim are much better at recognizing truth and falsehood. Computers maybe are much better at recognizing truth and falsehood. If we're just calculating machines, then we don't need humans for that. We already said humans can't achieve full emes, so what's the point of our existence? What makes us unique is haracha, ability to evaluate. This is the unique human quality, but now we need to make sure that we use it well, that we understand how we're being marich, that we know when we're being marich and when we're evaluating and when we're assessing. So this is the homework for this thought of Revolver. We're not now dealing, as per every chapter of Revolver, we're not dealing with a casual side matter. We're dealing with the essence of what we are as human beings. We are Marichim. We already said from a baby at birth and onwards, this is the first part of ourselves that opens up. It's an answer to the question, Mahu Adam, what is a human being? Which is the topic of this series. We now have another answer to this. We are evaluators. We're not just beings who seek truth, though of course we should seek truth, and of course we should do our best to understand it. But at our core, we are evaluators. We value, we weigh things up. We have our favorites, we have our preferences. And we're able to create, literally, yesh me'ayin, something from nothing, using our ability to evaluate. And if we think about being domeh, similar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the creator of the world, part of that is to be creative, to create. Where do we have the possibility of creating? Not in the world of emes v'shaka, because that's simply, in a sense, passive. We're learning to recognize what's outside ourselves. Where are we creative? Only in the realm of the subjective, where we can bring ourselves into it. In the objective world, we're just objects. In the objective world, everything is created by Hashem. So how can we human beings be little creators? How can we bring yesh me'ayin into existence? So we give lots of answers to that question. We gave an answer to that question when we learnt Kuntras HaChesed, and we spoke about kindness. We gave an answer to that question when we learnt Kuntras HaBachira in this series, and we spoke about free will. But now we're giving, in a sense, a more profound answer to that question. When we're talking about what is a human being, where can we create something? Only in the realm of subjective. That's our space, that's our domain, us, our perspective. In the objective, Hashem's created it all. In the realm of the subjective, that's the world of haracha, and there we can literally create something from nothing. And I'll leave you with that tantalizing thought with which we will start next time we learn. How can we human beings create something from nothing through this quality of evaluation? And that's what's unique about us, that's what makes us human beings, and that's where we will start, please God, in Hashem next week. In the meantime, I wish you all a wonderful Yom Tov, a good Shavuos, and a time of Kabbalah Torah, of Matan Torah, and I'm looking forward to restarting in 2 weeks' time in Hashem. Be well.